Welcome to Behind the Play, a video and podcast product of The Hoop Show that explores the lives of Geelong players past and present, as well as the off-field figures that are keeping us Geelong strong. My name is Paul James, and today we've got someone from the other side of the fence. It's always awesome to have different perspectives, especially when we're able to chat to them in the week of a contest between Geelong and the opponent. Riles, Macca, welcome to Behind the Play, and looking forward to talking Swans with you.
Yeah, mate, it's a pleasure to be on here, and thanks for having me. Keen to get into it.
Far less trauma associated with chatting to you as opposed to the Sydney Swans support person I had earlier in the year who I was chatting to Nick Davis at the time, and so there was a little bit of PTSD that got dredged up there when we started talking about that goal of his. But thankfully you've not inflicted such trauma on me, so it'll be a good chat and I'll get through it far easier. Looking forward to chatting though, mate.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, keen to get into it.
So I guess let's kind of start at the beginning and talk through, I guess, where footy came into your life in the first place. I mean, were you one of those that was kind of born footy in hand? Did it take a while to discover the game? How did footy enter your life in the first place?
Yeah, pretty much through Dad. Obviously born in Melbourne, so from a Victorian state, but my dad's side's actually Northern Irish, so he came over to Australia around the mid-'80s, and he fell in love with VFL straight away. So yeah, he wanted to pass the sport down to me as good as we can. When I was actually 2, we moved to China for 4 years. So we came back. Yeah, we moved back to Australia when I was around 6. And yeah, Dad just wanted to get me straight into AFL straight away, get a footy in my hands and everything. And yeah, pretty much just grew from there. It was pretty big with soccer growing up as well. So soccer and AFL I do on the weekend. And then yeah, through high school, just focused on AFL, and obviously grew a love for the game when watching it as well the past few years. And also like father, like son. Dad is a Swans fan, so I had to adopt it as well. So, yeah, I guess sort of that's my journey. But yeah, earliest I can remember is probably coming back to Australia and just starting AFL straight away. So yeah.
So you obviously mentioned Dad being a Swan supporter, and that's obviously usually the parents have a key influence over the support of who the children go on to support. But what about him? I mean, was his love of the Swans based on a South Melbourne thing, given that you said you're obviously Victorian yourself? Was it a South Melbourne thing, or was it always a Sydney thing? Like, how did the Swans become the team from Dad through to you?
Not actually too sure, to be honest. I haven't really asked in-depth questions like that to him, but yeah, obviously when he moved to Melbourne, it was still South Melbourne, I'm pretty sure. So he was sort of at that awkward age as well where he couldn't really play locally. So yeah, he did miss out, and but yeah, he just loved watching it. And yeah, always tells me stories about the '05 grand final when we were in China. He watched it from a pub in Beijing. So yeah, it's
nice.
It's good that he's supporting a good club. And yeah, I'm pretty fortunate that I've been able to actually at least witness a flag in my lifetime. So yeah.
And so what were some of the earliest footy memories for you then as you became the Swans fan and started watching? Obviously, you just mentioned there he's talking about the 2005 experience, but it's not something that you necessarily have. So yeah, what was some of the first memories for you when it comes to watching the footy?
When I was pretty young, I wasn't like fully into AFL necessarily. Like obviously, I'd still watch it and stuff with Dad and everything. And I'd honestly say probably, sometimes because we live in Canberra, we go to a few games at Macca. I remember watching a Swans game there, but probably the earliest best memory was definitely 2012.
Oh yeah, of course.
Watching the prelim final and the grand final as well, and Dad getting up in a bet and everything, and that was a pretty memorable afternoon. So yeah, probably around 2012, I'd assume, and as I grew older, obviously gained more interest in watching the sport. So yeah.
And what was your feeling going into that 2012 grand final? Considering obviously we know what the Hawks ultimately went on to do, but the buzz about them at the time, I mean, they were widely considered the favourites going into the day, not outrageous favourites, but widely considered to be the favourites going into the day, and obviously it's a memorable win for Swan supporters and really for anyone who thinks back on grand finals of the last couple of decades. It's right up there being amongst one of the best. So I guess what memories do you have of that day, and where were you to enjoy it?
Oh yeah, at home. Watching with Dad. Yeah, heading into it. I knew that we were definitely the outsiders. So I was only around 10 or 9 years old. So again, I wasn't really too much necessarily in depth of how we'd actually go and everything. But I just remember it was a really seesawing battle. Nick Malcheski, Dan Hanbury, one of my favourite Swans to watch. He was just brilliant that day. Or even Alex Johnson as well in defence. Was brilliant. And yeah, I just felt, Adam Goods as a player also loved in that game as well. But I I think I don't know. I was pretty up and about around the third or second term. We kicked a bunch in a row up by comfortable margin. I think it was around 3 or 4 goals, and then they just went on a rampage, kicked a few in a row. I think Isaac Smith put them in front, and yeah, I mean, Dad wasn't too happy, and yeah, just rode the fourth term, and it was pretty eventful. I think it was Luke Bruce hitting the post as well, so that probably saved us a bit. And then yeah, Nick Malcheski's winner, and yeah, for me, Dan Hanbury, from memory, I felt he was definitely the best on ground. He kicked that goal in the full term as
Yeah,
well,
yeah, for sure.
to keep us alive, and Goodsey knocking one through, and then yeah, Malcheski with the winner. So yeah, sort of vague a little bit, given I was pretty young, but still remembered quite a bit. And yeah, Dad was definitely getting up and about. So yeah, definitely one of the more memorable ones.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, you're pretty young bloke at the time, and so this whole experience of going on to win a flag, like once the premiership actually happens, I mean, how quickly does it sink in? Yeah, it's still been a decade of your life still at that point before you tasted it. So, and obviously not all of that were you super conscious of the game in the first place, but like, a grand final win is a grand final win. So how long does it take before it sinks in and you realise that your team is the best one in the comp that year?
Yeah, I was pretty up and about. I mean, again, I was only 9 years old, so it doesn't obviously have a full reflection of maybe like an old South Melbourne supporter in the
Yeah,
'05 grand final would have meant a lot more. But I was pretty happy. Like, oh yeah, the best team in the AFL and stuff. But obviously, 2014, 2016, and obviously 2022 definitely meant a little bit more. The feelings and stuff, riding the season a little bit more, watching the own way season games. But yeah, obviously quite young, so I was just pretty excited that we
yeah.
got up, and yeah, we're yeah pretty fortunate that during my time watching the Swans, I've always been probably around the top end of the tree throughout the more duration when I've watched the Swans. So yeah.
Yeah, certainly. Both, I guess, for your entire life, yeah, both of our clubs have really been those leaders. In terms of, I mean, we obviously hear about the club culture being spoken about for the Cats, but also the Swans as well, and obviously the success on field. In terms of grand finals, but also grand final appearances, finals appearances. Like it's. I mean, both of our teams currently sit outside of the top eight. I cannot imagine by the end of the year that we'll end with at least like one of them's got to be there. It's just a
Yeah.
staple of the competition these days, and regardless of whether it ends up being the Cats or the Swans, you almost feel like the finals deserve like one of those two teams have to be there.
Yeah, definitely. I think it wasn't like 1963 the last time two teams ever made from the grand final the
Oh yeah,
previous
from the
year. They
grand
haven't made
final.
it. Yeah, in the final eight. So
I'll
yeah,
back in your stats work there because
yeah. So I've
I
read
haven't
it
dreamt that one up.
somewhere. They've said on a few broadcasts before. It's been since like the '60s the last time that's happened. So be a rare trait. But yeah, I just think with the run home, both teams usually good second half of the year sides as
True.
well. So yeah, I think definitely more likely Geelong again probably. I'd love to be bullish on us, but I've got to set against good quality opposition. So yeah, I think one of us has to be in the final eight. You think?
Yeah, so before we cast an eye to the game ahead for the Cats, and of course even the work that you've done in footy over the last few years, how do you? I mean, you just touched on the road home for the Swans there. How are you feeling about that road home? Both clubs have a difficult trek ahead, but I guess with that win under the belt this past week, which we of course have to discuss, that 171 point
Yeah.
hiding of a waffle team, but ultimately. 171 point win was a huge percentage booster for you. How are you feeling then, and how do you feel like that sets up a potential assault at what is probably for both teams going to be the case of the bottom half of the eight? But how do you feel like that sets things up?
Well, I think just looking at us this year, still pretty young side. Injuries left, right, and centre a wee bit. But I think the main thing is we've been we've sort of just played. We've been pretty good when we've been high in confidence, and when we're low in confidence, when the game's not really on our terms, we haven't been so great. So I think that's just the best thing we could have asked for. I still feel there's been a few downhill skis this year. A wee bit of Chad Warner and Isaac Heaney that haven't been too great in losses necessarily, and I just think that's definitely given us a lot of maybe inflated egos, but definitely
Yeah,
boosted confidence. But yeah, as I've said a few times, it's just like against the good quality opposition, we have not one. It's just plain and simply the only good opposition we've beaten this year. Or the highest on the ladder is Richmond
the Tigers.
and Gold Coast, who I think are 10th, and then Richmond are 11th. So
Yeah,
yeah, haven't been able to shot to those top sort of quality sides. But in saying that, we still have shown some good footy in patches. We just haven't won games. Haven't
strung it
played good
together.
enough
Yeah,
for the full vertical performances. St Kilda game we probably should have won. We gave that away. Against the Giants at home we dropped. probably should have beaten Port Adelaide. We've just, we always just seem to give away a lot of surges,
Yep.
give away quite a bit of a surge in the amount of goals. And, for our fourth terms have been quite awful too, giving up a lot of contested ball. I had the chance against the Pies, but kicking it accurately. So, yeah, we've been able to show some good, string together some good patches against good sides. But I think the main thing Horse always says each week when we lose is just we're still trying to find the consistency.
Yep.
So I think, with that massive win, kicking over 200 points, it was against a bad opposition, but still 200 points.
200 points.
It's got to be noted, and we haven't really been able. We usually are a good scoring side, for the past month or so, have been able to show it. So, is that just what we needed? Is that what the doctor ordered? I mean, this is a good chance now, heading against the Cats, who usually are pretty strong defence, but have had a few patches, I think, the Cats this year, but they haven't been too strong defensively. I know Radical E's coming back in Dangerfield, so. I think the main thing as well is we've just got to really blitz it with our pressure. We've always been up there, but consistency and always got to take the game on. I think sometimes our corridor use has been really flat as well. So it should be a cracker on Friday night. Can you see how it unfold?
Yeah, it'll certainly be an interesting one, because the defence has looked a bit brittle on our side at different points over the course of the year. I do feel like the pieces are now there in terms of the defensive puzzle. I feel like everyone is now in place, and it'll be actually interesting to see what happens, how the pieces get shuffled around with Asava coming back, because I feel like Sam De Koning, for example, that was absolutely his best game of the season this past week, and that's because he was playing his core position. And look, he obviously had a bit of an interrupted beginning of the season with concussion, and then obviously facial injuries and a host of different things that really, and he's just getting bashed at the beginning of the year too.
Yeah.
So he was always a little bit off, but I feel like he was also done a disservice by not being played in his best position, which was the key post in defence. And Asava was playing there. Now with Asava coming back into the mix, I don't know what that does to Sam De Koning. And I mean, yeah, it'll be a really interesting one there. And obviously you got a few forwards that are pretty up and about after kicking a bag this week. Obviously Joel Amati, I think I just saw signed on. So he's going to be there a while, and obviously is a really promising tall forward there. You've obviously got McDonald as well. Like they're two amazing future prospects when it comes to the tall forward the stocks, I suppose. But then you can add Heaney in. I mean, you kick 200 points and Papley kicked 1 goal.
Yeah, he's been
absurd.
Yeah, he's been odd this year, I think. Perhaps
kicked 6 against the Tigers. Against us though.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, he kicked 6 against the Tigers, but apart from that, he hasn't really shown much. I think he's always added a bit more of an unselfish sort of skill set towards his skill set. I think, a few years ago, he used to be a little bit more selfish, but I think he's top 5 in goal assists at the end of the home race season last year, so he actually has.
Which would have fooled me, to be fair. That's really interesting little stat.
Yeah, he always tries and finds that centering ball, I find. And with a few centre bounces, he can obviously get a few clearances and could lead into a goal assist. But, he is good on either feet. And, just hasn't been able to break free a bit this year. He's usually quite lively, but, apart from a bit of pressure, hasn't been able to hit the scoreboard. So, that's obviously a reason why I haven't been able to score much this year. And sort of same with Heaney too, and Will Hayward as well. He was in had illness last week, but he's struggled to hit the board. So I think a lot of those forwards have just had issues with hitting the scoreboard consistently really. And before Logan McDonald was injured, I think he had like 16 goals, so he was projecting to a 40 goal year potentially as a
this early in your career is pretty good.
And Buddy in and out of the side. So I think next year is a good chance to get it right without Bud. But Bud is still important. Like when he's fit, he plays. It's as simple as that.
He draws your best defender no matter what.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then you've got I think Hayden McLean's been really strong the past month or so. He's playing his role really well. He's strong in the air, brings the ball to ground. So I think he's another one that's in talks of a contract extension. So Marty McLean, Jack Bulley picked up a mid-season draft, and Logan McDonald. So those 4 key position players down our forward line who are all under 24, I'm pretty sure. So, I think the future's in good hands for now. And, I think the key position, the key defence stocks is probably where it's limiting for us. So maybe in the off-season we target someone, perhaps with both McCartan brothers having issues with concussion.
Yeah. Well, I normally meander back on into the grand finals, and I guess we've spoken about the positives, and we'll touch on the less exciting moments of grand finals shortly. But we'll stick with the current game and the game coming up. given that we're there already. There is obviously the other end of the ground, and you've just touched on it there with both McCartans down and out at the moment. The defence has been a little bit vulnerable. Certainly, Geelong managed to get a hold of you earlier in the season through that exact avenue. I guess one of the questions I've got now, Jeremy Cameron's not going to be playing, which certainly makes things lightens the load a little bit, even though I would say Jez has been well and truly out of form for the last 5 to 6 weeks. I guess what do you feel like the Swans need to do in that respect? What do you think those matchups are going to look like? The Cats, obviously, Danger has gone down forward a few times against the Swans and towed up Rampy and Mills on various occasions, much to the displeasure of both. He seems to have a decent time when he goes and plays forward against the Swans. But I guess what do you think about that defensive end in terms of how do you curtail that Geelong attack? You touched on before. Obviously, we've got a very high scoring output with or without Jeremy Cameron. What do they need to do to curtail the Cats in the middle? In the forward line.
Forward line. Well, the last outing was a mixture of just issues with the defence. Callum Mills was playing on Tom Hawkins throughout times of that game. Nick Blakey, I think that was after the Richmond game, so it was around still one of his first games was actually playing as a key defender, and I think he's improved game by game a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Still played that role, sort of, very good in the air, so I think he's building game by game, Blakey, important part of our defence. But yeah, I think how the Cats got, you guys got us last time was just all those marks inside 50. The thing with the Cats is they're always such a clean side when going inside 50. I think they're still one of the top-rated teams for attacks.
Yeah, we still are up there, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I think Rampy, he's been a little bit out of form since he's come back in, but he's a veteran. He'll probably improve with match fitness as the game gets on. Tom McCartan back in the team after a good stint in the VFL, so that's promising. So, Tom McCartan always goes the number one key defender. And Melican, he was injured all last year, and I've always rated him as quite a decent player in the air. Yeah, so we'll probably throw a few things around. Maybe Francis gets dropped and Robbie Fox comes back onto one of the smalls, maybe someone like a Brad Close or I think Brian Myers usually a little bit higher up the ground. But Geelong's attack is, I think, this year a lot more focused on Brian Myers, Gary Rowan, Brad Close, those sort of types. Because, obviously Hawkins, Cameron's still doing the load, but a lot of those role plays is what makes the Geelong forward line really great. And when we defend well as a back six. It isn't necessarily Tom McCartan having all the intercept marks. We're usually a good side at ground level in our defence half, and we get it out there cleanly. We did that against the Blues, I thought, pretty well. Last year when we were on a roll, we were really strong defensively as a back six. So, yeah, I think McCartan probably goes on Hawkins, and then I don't know, does someone like a Jack Henry maybe swing forward for the Cats, perhaps?
Yeah, the two Henrys. You got Rowan.
Yeah.
Who knows what happens with Danger? That's probably dependent on, I guess, the other, like the real key to the whole match being the midfield, because Geelong's big weakness at the moment still is the midfield, where we've just been down soldiers all year there, or when they come back, they might be a little bit underdone. I wouldn't say Danger's necessarily underdone. He was kicking the door down to try and play last week, and that had been 4 days since he broke a rib and punctured a lung. So, I don't know how he does it, but I think like if there's an opportunity to catch the Cats, it's absolutely in the midfield, because they're just not quite firing on all cylinders there. Certainly the loss of Cam Guthrie, which I think people kind of lose sight of how important he actually is to that. He's an accumulator, and without him, everyone else, you only have to look at the stats. Like our best midfield performances tend to be low 20 possession gets, which. That doesn't necessarily equal everything. And you touched on it when you're talking about the Brian Myers and co. It's about the delivery inside the forward 50 and its efficiency and those sort of things. That's where we tend to get teams. But it certainly helps if you're getting your hands on the ball as well.
Yeah.
And we've kind of struggled at the coalface at different points. And certainly the game against Melbourne was a nice sign that things were headed in the right direction. So hopefully Danger can be exactly what we need there, rather than break even, which I thought was the most important thing against the D's, is actually get the lead coming out of the midfield there. In fact, win the centre contest and those and all of those sort of opportunities around the midfield. So, but I think if there is an opportunity there for the Swans, it's that if they can rip it away at the coalface, and obviously you've got so many strong bodies there. Your Luke Parkers, for example, at the head of it, that just combative constantly and will not back down. Like that sort of approach to the ball is going to be huge for the Swans. And if they can do that and then deliver into the forward 50. Put Asava, put Tom Stewart, those sorts of players actually under a bit of pressure, and it changes things significantly.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And we saw the same thing with our midfield. We've been very inconsistent this year as well. We can start off games pretty strong, and then against the Saints, the second half, we just give it away with the contested ball, and then we lose the game. But yeah, Callum Mills back with full fitness definitely helps us. Been tossing around the midfield a little bit. Sometimes Errol Goulden's been playing on the wing a little bit as of late, and he's
Yep,
been honestly bossing it there, and he can always
he's
come
had a
into
huge
defender.
season.
Yeah, no, he's been really, really good, loving his year. Yeah, great goal kicking player. But yeah, I think I do agree. Yeah, definitely the midfield battles where it is to be won. But I still feel, especially at the SCG, when we get our defensive transition going, or the ball movement from D50 going, we can be a really good side. I think when we score a specific amount of goals, each game we usually win a game of footy. So yeah, it's just about that corridor use we've really got to own. Trying against Tom Stewart, because
Yeah,
when you, I think Jed McEntee went on to him against Port, and he had a really quiet
squashed him.
game.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then Tom Stewart had a big full term against the D's, won the game from that. So, I think maybe Ryan Clark, obviously now in the side again, he's got to try and do his best to try and take him out of the game. But yeah, it's definitely going to be trying and one in the midfield. That's probably that's the area. And both sides good with moving the ball too. So yeah, probably the midfield is going to be the biggest attention point, I guess you can say, with this game.
yeah, you're right. To engage Tom Stewart, and that's a huge thing for any team. Is if you just keep him interested, you can't allow him to float off. You've got to make sure that you're a viable option. If you can do that, then it puts a lot of pressure on. And it's like McKenty's not some sort of world-renowned gun or anything like that, but he moved into brilliant positions that forced Tom Stewart away. Or if he was if the ball was going into his area, he made sure he was in the contest with Tom and ensured that he wasn't getting that easy intercept mark. It's a very simple on paper way to stop Tom Stewart. Obviously, executing is a whole other thing, but it does begin with just wherever he is. If you're there, you're off to a pretty damn good start. So we'll see how that goes anyway.
Yep.
Moving back to, I guess, historical stuff. We touched on the 2012 Premiership and obviously how huge that was. 2005, obviously not having the greatest memories of it at that particular stage, but setting aside the most recent grand final performance for now, the Swans have been known to be in some pretty huge, battles when it comes to grand finals. There's 05 and 06 that were, coin toss majority of the way through the game. 2012 was obviously pretty tight the whole time, as we've discussed as well. 13 was, 14, really tight as well. There's 16. You've touched on these yourself. I guess, how do you reflect on those ones, considering the margins and considering the quality of the team that the Swans had over that period?
Yeah, well, 2014, 2016 just dropped those grand finals. Honestly, on paper, should have won it. 2014, I thought, was our strongest team out of the whole 2010s, possibly. We were just so
Yep.
strong that year. Everyone was at their peak. McVeigh, Kieran Jack, Adam Goods,
But
first year of Buddy, too. We were firing that year, and I felt we were going to be a good chance for the flag, good favourites up against the Hawks. But I think, it was what's his face? What his name? Roughhead. He just
yeah,
crushed him straight in Hanbury, straight in. And we're just like, we haven't mentally turned up to this game, and just really shut our pants from that first quarter onwards. So yeah, that was a really disappointing day to witness. The Hawks trounced all over us, and yeah, that was a bit of a rivalry throughout the 2010s. That Hawks and Swans rivalry. Got a few Hawks mates who just would just
love to give it to
absolutely
you.
despise the Swans. So 2014 was a bit of a bummer, but yeah, 2016 too, against the Bulldogs. Obviously, a lot of Swans fans like to forget that grand final with the questionable umpiring and everything. But again, it sort of was a similar case of, it just felt like we didn't really mentally turn up to that game. I felt we should have been a really good chance. But yeah, just really shut the bed on that game as well. And I think Buddy did get that little early niggle early on in that game. I think it was something like his ankle as well. So
Yes. Yep.
he didn't really look too up to it. But there was so many poor performances in that game. I think it was Kurt Tippett's worst game in a Swans jersey that I could remember of. But a few young players in there. It was Callum Mills' first year. We started a bit of a young crop, and but yeah, that was a disaster of a loss, and really, really deflating. I think probably the most deflating, because it felt like we're in the game, but we just never really assert our dominance too much. And apart from Joey Kennedy's, I think he's kicked 2 or
Doing
3
what
goals.
Joey Kennedy does, yeah.
Yeah, no, he was sensational that game. Apart from that, really did suck to drop that one. But it was a great moment for the Bulldogs and everything too. But you just can't allow a fairy tale like that to happen when you finish first for the season and you're looking all primed for a potential flag. And yeah, dropping that one was a bit of a bummer. But I have to say though, the past decade or so, it followed probably one of my more favourite seasons to watch as a Swans fan. That 2017 year started 0-6 and managed to claw our way back up the ladder, just winning games left and
One of
right
the
in
few
that second
teams who've
half.
ever been able to be so successful after such a poor start.
Yeah, and it was just such a fun ride watching us in that second half of the year. So, yeah, many ups and downs as a Swan supporter, but yeah, there's always something in grand finals. I mean, Luke Parker's never really been able to dominate a grand final. I think he's always been one of the talking points when it comes to grand finals. Even if looking from a pessimistic sort of view, John Longmire, is he the right man? Is he ever going to get us a flag? Because he just never is
Not
able
quite,
to
yeah.
deliver. We're just never mentally prepared. I think that's the main thing when we reflect on those grand finals.
Which I guess links into this past year. I guess the enormous contrast. I know there were additional circumstances between the game that the two teams played obviously earlier in the year. What was it, round two in the end, with Buddy in his 1,000th goal, and Sydney coming away with a pretty comprehensive win in the end
Hmm.
that particular night. To then what happened in the grand final months later. I guess, how do you reflect on those two contests and the vast difference between them? I mean, well, yeah, just I guess what happened in your eyes.
Just mental. It's just the mental aspect of it is how I look at it. People always forget how important the mental side of things is with the sport, and it always ties to our list itself. It's still a very young side, and a lot of people are anticipating the Swans to maybe drop off after a pretty good 2021 year, just given the second year blues and a few particular players. And
Yeah,
that first half of the year, I mean, I always look back on it on we were very inconsistent. When we dropped games, we honestly should have won. We played quite poor. We lost to the Suns early in that year. We had the really slow starts in that first half of the year as well. Against the Hawks, we're down like 40-0, then clawed our way back. There's definitely a lot of inconsistencies, sort of similar to this year with our contested game and everything. But yeah, just after it was against the loss against Essendon, we won every single game for the rest of the year, and sort of brings me back to my point about the Swans in generally these past few years. It's just that we are not, I wouldn't say necessarily a mentally weak side, but it's just that when we are up and about, we seem to catch momentum better than most teams. But when we're in a bit of a slump,
takes
we
a
are
while to
one of
get
the,
going.
yeah, it takes a while to get going again. And maybe that gains experience the best out of a few of our young crop. But yeah, that second half of the year was just all about the pressure. I'm always up there in the league category game after game. Finally got it right with the consistency of the contested game, and players just kicking goals for fun. Papley missed out in the first 6 weeks, I think it was,
Yeah,
of that season, but still made the All Australian squad. I thought he was key to us. And Ryan Clark having a revelation of a year, just tagging every defensive player, accumulator back there every time we versed an opposition. And it was very, very enjoyable that second half of the year, and knocking off the Pies too. I was pretty bullish about. I just felt after that win against Collingwood, this is a really good chance for the flag. And into the final series, I felt pretty confident against the D's because knocked them off there before.
yeah.
But yeah, everyone was just playing their part. Defensive, the back six were playing brilliantly as well. Mills was in superb form. A few young players were definitely up and about. And I think compared to this year, it's just definitely injuries. We barely had any injuries last year. I don't think we had
Yeah,
pretty much any.
yeah.
And one
Both our
player,
teams had a pretty clean sheet for a
yeah,
large chunk of the year.
yeah, exactly. And I think one player to note is definitely Sam Reid. He was key to us in our run because um, he's never been able to get a full string of games. I think he had the most consistent amount of games last year than any point
In his
in
career.
almost something like that. He's still always struggled with injury, but he was really good overhead for us. He was always able to take that strong contested mark whenever we moved the ball and then launch inside 50. So he was a key part for us. And definitely Paddy and Tom McCart were definitely playing great footy too. So, yeah, just reflect on it. It's all about the mental side of things. Young side were up and about, but yeah, there was just something with that grand final when we finally arrived. Maybe was it because of the close loss against the Pies that burst our bubble with our method and everything. But yeah, the young side as well. A lot of nervous looks and faces with that national anthem. I remember seeing too, and even going watching the game live with Dad down in Melbourne. Made the trip down. Just never looked mentally ready for that game. So yeah.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, as you're reflecting on the earlier half of the season, and then I guess the way it really marries up with what ultimately happened grand final day. You touched on the fact that you gave teams a head start or whatever, but maybe they'd lapsed for a little bit, and that's what let the Swans back in. Tails get up, they chase them down, and it was almost like grand final day. Okay, you've given them a jump, but the Cats, I guess maybe the occasion had a bit to do with it as well. But the Cats realised, okay, we've got them. Like, we've got a sniff here. This is our chance. They're down. Do not take the foot off at no in no way, shape or form can you afford to let them back in here, knowing what the Swans are totally capable of now. And from that point, things just degraded and got worse and worse and worse for the Swans at that particular point. But I guess despite the fact that I'm a supporter of the victor from that day, I'm a bit disappointed with the way that the day played out. The game, the year, the two teams deserved a better end note than that. I won't object ultimately with the premiership out of it, but would have loved for a greater spectacle. I guess at the end of the day, I was there at the G on the day, and would have loved to have. I mean, I lapped up the moment. It was it was a bit of a party, but I think both teams deserve better than that. The finals that had been transpired to that point were huge. Like, it deserved a better end cap than that, which was a bit of a shame. But as you touched on, young team, there's still a lot to learn from it, and this might be that little down year that they're having at the moment that then helps them surge the following year. I certainly think about a Geelong 2006, for example, and 4 and 5, we were right there pointing at nearly grabbed a premiership along the way. We'll avoid 05 and the semi-final there, but and then 06 was the down year. Questions started getting asked. Now, I don't think the Swans necessarily need to go through a review as rigorous as what Geelong did in 2006, but it was that moment that then catapulted them in and really kind of got them taking a hard look internally and questioning some of the things that perhaps hadn't been questioned prior to that were just accepted as being okay. Well, actually they're not, and here's how we can improve them doing X, Y, and Z, and lift those standards even further to help them become the club that obliterated Port in the 2007 grand final. I mean, this could be an equivalent sort of moment for the Swans, where they've been there and thereabouts 2 years in a row now. We're having a downer. Who knows? And obviously the team has still got growth and maturity in them as well.
Yeah, I don't think we'll go to those extraordinary lengths of necessarily an internal club review and everything. But yeah, I can definitely see the down year in us. We didn't really have a strong off season. Only bringing in Aaron Francis pretty quiet in the draft, with trading a few picks. Well, we might be good this year, I think, because we've got a few academy boys running through that are part of the AFL academy, so it should be pretty good this year, and potentially maybe top 5. Should be a top 10 pick if we don't make finals. But
who knows? Maybe Tom DeConing too, if you read all the reports.
Perhaps Buddy at the door, so definitely give us a bit of cap space. Reed and Hickey probably will retire as well. So yeah, I think it's a failure of just the off season really not really making the most of that. But I still think if you're looking for a more positive side, I think we still got to back in the organic growth of our list. James Rowbottom, I think is if played a name, he's I think a top 2 tackler in the comp at the moment. Goulden gaining a bit of bulk, looking like he's a chance to get his mate an All-Australian blazer. A few really important young players in there, but it can definitely help with a bit of mature age players. I mean, Francis coming in hasn't been too great necessarily, but the injuries definitely hasn't helped, and I just think our execution hasn't been too great either, which I guess happens in a down year. There still has been some sort of positives, but we just haven't been able to play the best for full 4 quarters.
Yeah, it's one of those challenging years, but hopefully with roughly half a season left, that the team can make a charge, just like the Cats can hopefully do the same at the moment. So let's swing things around a little bit and hone in on, I guess, you and what you do, because for anyone who's not aware, and I feel like I plugged things early on, but I'll make sure to do it again. The platform Riles Macca. How did that come about in the first place? What inspired you to get into creating content about footy? And I guess how are you going with the success of everything so far?
Well, I guess it started with just me in year 7, just doing year 7 stuff, just filming videos and everything. I used to do a lot of like sports trick shots and AFL trick shots, and I think they're still on the channel, so yeah, you can have a peek if you want. But sort of just when I was just growing up, just always casually uploaded stuff, and I used to do like AFL videos and trade rumors and stuff when I was pretty young. But I think it was 2021. I wanted to get back into doing some AFL content and everything, and just did a lot of highlight videos and Swans highlights, and that probably gained quite a bit of traction. It helped me get towards sort of where I am. But yeah, I had copyright issues at the end of 2021 with just
Oh,
all those clips and everything, which was a shame. But it sort of allowed me to now do the content I sort of want to do a little bit more. Just talking footy sort of videos and live watch alongs and everything, and footy tipping videos, and I wouldn't say necessarily analysis videos, but just like I look at myself as just a footy fan who loves making videos and just talking footy about my team and about the league and everything. And yeah, sort of just always just continuing to build my channel as it gets on. But yeah, sort of just talking footy and footy team videos, all that whatnot is what I pretty much do on the channel now. And yeah, definitely calling games as well with a few live watch alongs on top of that as well.
yeah, and certainly things like the live watch alongs. Obviously, the focus gets to be on you and your personality and those sorts of things. It's really obviously in that sort of scenario because, as you touched on, copyrights and strikes and all those sort of things that can come
Mm,
raining in if you try and actually project the game at the same time.
mm,
The personality is what drives it, and I think like any content creator, regardless of whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on other social media platforms, whatever your poison might be. All of them will say it's about the personality. It's what of yourself can you put out there that kind of engages the community and gets that back and forth and those sort of things. And I mean, everything I see, like the engagement that you get from, I mean, obviously some Swans fans, and you're not shy about the fact that you are a Swans fan. Even now, as we record, for anyone listening to the audio version of this, the '05 poster is right there, prominently in the
yeah.
background. There's no missing it. You're not, and often the Swans beanie is on as well. There's no trying to hide that aspect, but at the same time,
Mm,
when it comes to the Swan stuff, you speak from the heart. You tell it exactly like it is. You've done so on this show so far. But then,
mm,
as you touched on yourself, there's that analysis and being able to have an informed opinion on what's going on with the other clubs, but still injecting a bit of yourself into it as well is huge, and that's what attracts a community. And I mean,
mm.
all credit to you with everything you've achieved so far.
Oh yeah, cheers, mate. Really, yeah, really appreciate it. And yeah, it's just continuing to grow is always something I want to do. I always just love talking footy and everything. And always thinking about bringing guests on and etc. And maybe collaborating a little bit more. I guess that's something somewhere I can improve. But yeah, just predictions and everything. And during the off season, I did a few of them last off season, just a bit more sort of like video essays, I guess you can say,
Yep.
and things like that. Yeah, just did a few videos because I've always learned how to use like Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop a little bit more. So yeah, just integrating graphics, and I've felt like I've always improved as the years have gone by a wee bit too. But yeah, a few examples of it was like what happens if the AFL would have if introduced relegation and promotion sort of system. So I did a video off that too. And yeah, sort of just like top 10 draft busts and all those sort of historical videos. I've enjoyed doing the off season as well. So yeah, just always wanting to grow, continuing doing those videos.
And people always love a countdown list, so you're definitely onto
Yeah.
something with things like the draft busts and those sorts of things. It's yeah,
Hmm.
people love it. Doesn't matter what
Yeah.
medium it is, whether it's video, whether it's written lists, people love it. So
Hmm.
I guess beyond those sort of things, and as you touched on, there's collaborations and those sorts of things too. What do you feel like is the next, I guess, star that you want to reach for? Is it a platform that you feel like you haven't tapped as much as you'd like to yet? Or I mean, obviously we know the great numbers that go to TikTok as one such example. Like that is the big
Hmm.
platform these days. Is there somewhere for you that you feel like, okay, I can dedicate a bit more of my own resource to that,
Um,
or
yeah,
want
I
to? I guess
definitely.
there's the ability to, but then there's also desire to, and I guess those two, there's a sweet spot in the middle there too.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, I wouldn't necessarily say the desires there for TikTok, but definitely it would help with numbers and everything. But yeah, I've always been quite an old school sort of social media guy, if that makes any sense. Like,
No, you got me.
I've always liked I like the YouTube side of things because I feel like you always put a bit more effort in the YouTube videos, whilst TikTok you can just gain views by people just scrolling through and everything. But yeah, I think just collaborations and maybe trying to get out there a little bit more and try and sort of promote my brand and what I do a wee bit more, I guess you can say. With the live watch longs, people do and seem to enjoy my commentating and calling, and
Good.
people are like, oh, you should be a commentator and everything. And I felt like, oh, maybe reach out to the local leagues and stuff and start doing a bit of calling and everything, and maybe grow off that as well. And also maybe links to what I actually want to do as a job itself. I've always, at the moment I'm studying film and media at TAFE.
Yep.
I'm seeing maybe where could I go with that. I've always been interested in maybe camera operating with sports and stuff, and maybe sports media or something along the lines of that. So, yeah, I'm pretty young. I mean, I'm only 20 years old, so yeah, just always wanting to just chip away with YouTube, see where it takes me. But it's always like a handy thing to have maybe when wanting to promote what I do towards people, maybe get a job through that. But yeah,
Yep.
definitely, I think just trying to promote myself and maybe get more collaborations and sponsorships and everything.
Yeah, I mean, as you touched on, the study that you're doing certainly provides you with some very transferable skills that you can apply to this and any potential growth as well. Let alone the potential for going off and doing some commentary and those sort of things. And as I touched on before, and if there's anyone watching, listening who hasn't caught any of Riley's stuff, please make sure to do so, because I know you said that it's not really necessary analysis and those sort of things, but your analysis of the game is extensive. You've really got, in my opinion anyway, some really great opinions on the game and the way that the game is evolving, what you see from moment to moment throughout each game, and even just the way I didn't necessarily plan for it in the show, but the way we really pulled apart some of those games early in the piece from last season to this season to the grand final, etc. Like, I doubt you had a set of notes sitting there ready, so like you're able to just wheel those off. Like, that's important to this whole thing. And if you do end up in that commentary space, you've got that sort of deep thinking ready to go. So I wish you nothing but the best if that ends up being a pathway for you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, mate. And yeah, as I always say, I'm just a fan who loves the sport and loves to give my opinion. I don't think I'm an expert or anything, and certainly there's other more people that think I'm quite better and probably a lot better of the game itself. But yeah, just always enjoy, giving my opinion and yeah, just talking footy itself.
And obviously you've got that little bit, that extra bias towards the Swans, obviously, but at the same time you try and keep things pretty general. Are there plans to try and engage a little bit more with the Swans as your obviously preferred and supported club to work? You touched on collaborations and those sorts of things. Now that's obviously we're collaborating right now, but there's those more focused things on the Swans themselves. I mean, is that on the cards? Something you're eyeing off more of?
Oh, I mean, yeah, I love to be a part of it. Maybe engage a bit more with the Swans, but yeah, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it too much. Maybe engaging with a few other Swans creators and stuff. There's a great podcast by the name of True Bloods. They've gotten people on. Maybe I could, collaborate with them a little bit more, sort of get a Blue Abroad system sort of going.
Yep.
Blue Abroad, that channel,
Yeah, Terry.
they've,
Yep.
yeah, many people were, collaborating with them now, many Carlton fans. Maybe sort of join on and get a bit of a Swans thing going, bit of a more of a Swans massive hub with fan cams and reviews and everything. I've always had a ponder about that. But yeah, I think the main thing is I've just wanted to just stick with chipping away and just growing my brand and my channel and everything. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, in the meantime, the stuff that you're doing is awesome. So I really encourage everyone watching and listening to go check some of that out if you haven't already done so. So we've touched on the game ahead a little bit already, which allows us to kind of jump into some winding down questions here. I guess often these are kind of geared towards people who are of the Cats persuasion. So it's going to be great to have the perspective of an external supporter, a Swan supporter in this case, and we'll engage on both sides of the fence here. Who, in your eyes, having been able to see a fair bit of footy over the years and covering all teams, who's the greatest Cat that you've ever seen?
Greatest Cat, bit of a toughie.
We'll flip it to talk about the Swans too in a sec. But
yeah, okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, probably has to be Gary Ablett. The cleanest and most just greatest player I think I've probably ever seen. Probably Dusty Martin would definitely be up there as well.
Yep.
Personal one, just given what he's done in finals. But yeah, I think Ablett's just grand level skills. What he's just been able to do when he came back to Geelong, still showing some superstar status. Goal kicking ability. He's probably just naturally the best footballer I've seen. But if we're talking someone that's just a bit more sort of X factor, a bit more impactful, I probably can't go past Dangerfield still, because I still think he's one of the best stoppage players in the competition. Just breaks away. He's so strong with like his core strength and everything. He's so hard to tackle. He can go forward, kick goals. Yeah, be a bit of a close one.
When he's
Probably,
kicking straight.
Yeah, oh yeah, he's always a bit of a yeah. He's always been known
respect.
for his hacky disposal and everything. But yeah, even like Tom Hawkins definitely up there as well. And I've it hates me to say it, but yeah, Gary Rowan I still think's had some great games in Geelong Guernsey too. But I wouldn't say I have a definite one, but probably either I'd say Gary Ablett or Dangerfield.
flipping the script a bit and talking about the Swans side of things. So obviously, we've touched on a lot of really strong Swans teams, and there's been a lot of players from a lot of really successful eras that have kind of been drifting through. They've not necessarily all been playing at the same time. Like we think about like a Geelong Super Team of 2007, that sort of thing. The Swans didn't necessarily have that. There was people at different ages and stages of their careers, and they might have all peaked at the same sort of time to result in an 05 or a 2012 premiership or featuring in the other the grand finals along the way. But with all that said, is there a standout Swan for you as well?
I've always loved, I'll sit and watch him live really because I was too young. But Brett Kirk, just
Yep.
Dad's one of Dad's favorites, and probably one of mine because he's
And one of
obviously
the great
I've read
speeches of all time too.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, but I've read his book and stuff, his biography and everything, and what he did like to get to where he was really really good. He really knuckled down, and he wasn't the most gifted footballer, but just his ethic and his how hard he worked to become who he was, and he was a very sort of gracious person and a very humble person off the field as well. A lot of meditating and everything, and I think just his story to where he got to, and his toughness on the field was really really something that I always love with a player like Brett Kirk. But probably one that I watch more. I probably can't go past Adam Goods. Just one of the
Yeah.
more versatile players I've ever watched. Can go forward, kick goals, back up ruckman as well, utility player, and some of his finals games was brilliant too. And Dad and I went to watch his last game, and I think it was 2015. So probably I'd definitely say Goodsy or Brady Kirk.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I made the reference to Brett Kirk's speech a moment ago, but that was I felt like as someone who didn't support the Swans, but obviously seen plenty of them because, as we said, they've featured in a lot of finals throughout the years as well.
Mm.
It was really emblematic of the guy. Yes, okay, it's it doesn't translate necessarily well to a hosting gig on TV at that particular moment, but it really represented what the guy was about in terms of supporting others. It's a team. Actually the thing more than anything else was it's a team. It's a team. It's a team. He just drove that point home, perhaps in excess in terms of that speech and the way it was delivered. But then you think about the way he played and his leadership, and it all marries up, and it just shows how genuine the guy was.
Yeah, and very, very spiritual guy. Sort of as I said before, he is quite big into the meditating sort of thoughts, things, and everything. But yeah, his last game, the 2010 semi-final against the Bulldogs. I've always watched. Obviously, watching that game and everything is they sort of the cameras are panned towards him, just delivering. Just you wish you heard the mics in the huddle. It looked like it was a cracker of a speech. But yeah, definitely leadership. He probably was one of the best Swans leaders, I think, out there and within the four walls of the footy club, probably really well respected too.
Just, I guess, flicking back to the Geelong side of it and the Gary Ablett Jr. thing that you just discussed, the typical question we ask is if you've got a schoolyard pick, and I know that, both of us still don't necessarily have the greatest level of exposure to Gary Ablett Sr. and what he did over the years, but if you've got a schoolyard pick, you're building your own team, and you've got Gary Jr., you've got Gary Sr. in front of you, which way are you going to go if you're trying to build up a team?
Oh, tough one. I'll probably just stick with Junior just because it's sort of hard to try and compare of how the older players would play in today's game a lot faster. Just the positions and everything are quite different now. It used to just be like a proper centre forward, proper full forward, but now it's a lot more dynamic and everything with players and everything. So I'd probably go Gary Ablett Jr. Just because such a special player he was, and a player that I watched quite more as well. So
No, good call. As a Cats fan, I get to see bits and pieces of the Swans. And we've obviously touched on some of the fantastic players there on the list now. But who is of the current crop? Who is the player that you just, I guess, look to more than anything else? Maybe is your favourite player, and also who is the player that as a Cats fan we should be keeping an eye out for coming through over the course of the next few years. So maybe hasn't gotten a lot of game time yet. Maybe potentially hasn't featured when Geelong has played the Swans over the last 12, 18 months or so. Who should we be keeping an eye on as well?
Oh, keep an eye on. Obviously, I wouldn't be the greatest to know much about your young talent and everything, given you're a Cats fan, you probably know a little bit more. But
Oh, sorry, I meant on the Swan side. Like, who should I be
Swans,
keeping an eye
sorry.
out for? Yeah,
Sorry,
sorry.
sir. I thought you
Poorly
meant
worded on my
Geelong.
end.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, a lot of young players probably coming through. I'd probably say, he got the Rising Star nomination, Angus Sheldrick.
Yep.
was a play we took with our first rounder in 2021. It was quite a bit of a bolter as well. I had the chance to take Van Ryn, a player I wanted to take, and of course he debuts against us, kicks 3 goals. I wasn't too happy and everything, and already cult figure as well with
You
all the
felt
rude
vindicated
chants.
at that point,
Yeah,
going, well,
yeah,
yeah.
definitely. But yeah, I'm really happy he's been able to good crack at it now. I think how we always recruit is like off the field and everything. I guess that applies to every club, but definitely with Kenny Beats and our list manager, he always wants to get to know the players a bit more off the field, talking to teachers and everything. I think he was the school captain at his school and everything, so he's got really good leadership qualities. He's a short fella at 178 centimeters, but he's I think he still has a little bit of puppy fat and everything. He's still quite a little bit pudgy and bulky and everything. But from what we've seen, and I saw in the VFL quite a bit last year, and this year he really shows he can be a damaging player. He's a very contested, heavy player. He's very good on the cold face, and he's good on both sides of the ball too. He's good on his right foot. He's not preferred. Probably a rare trait in AFL players these
Well,
days.
especially if you're a lefty as your
Yeah.
primary kicker.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, he's just. I think he's a really composed player from the games we've seen the past few weeks. So a really composed player. Has a lot of poise in the coal face too. So yeah, I think with the young crop we are, Park obviously getting on a bit. He's definitely going to be key the next few years. Gussie Sheldry.
Well, I'll definitely make sure to keep an eye on him. Presumably this week against the Cats. We'll hopefully, just quietly hoping he has a stinker. But everything appears to be proven wrong in terms of this coming week. But certainly one to keep an eye out for. Now, just shifting back to the Cats side. If as a Swan supporter, if you could grab anyone from that Cats list and add them to the squad right now, who would you grab?
Uh,
And
well,
you don't have to go Tim Kelly and throw the kitchen sink at it. Just like if you could poach one player from the Cats and
yeah, that's a tough one. I mean,
who's the important one? Is it addressing a need? Is it just going, well, this person's a superstar, I need it, like we need him?
yeah,
Do I take Jeremy Cameron no matter what, or do you go, well, we've got tall forwards, maybe I need to invest here, etc.
yeah. Always like to look at the age. I obviously love to grab Tom Stewart, Jeremy Cameron, sort of nearing the end of their prime. I still think we could take a mature age because that's probably one of the weaknesses on our list. But I just think Sam DeConing, get him in. He's what is he, 22, 23 now? So he's had a few years in the system. So I think he's there probably around the right sort of age category to come to the Swans. A player that my dream player is definitely Sam Taylor from the Giants because he's around the similar age to DeConing. So good in the air, so good 1-on-1. But yeah, from DeConing, what I saw last year, he was honestly one of the most impressive players I've thought out of the Cats list of last year, and his grand final was superb as well. I mean, I was just in awe of what he was able to do, and I wouldn't say reality struck him a bit this year, but obviously he's had his troubles with injury and personnel issues a little bit, so he struggled in that sort of terms. But yeah, I just think we need a key defender. That's probably our highest need in the team, and love to have DeConing.
No, I think there was a bit of a reality hit at points throughout the course of the season, and yeah, part of that's injuries, and there are a reality of things too. But also the fact that he hasn't necessarily had the support around him. Like I distinctly remember, it was my one criticism of him last year was that if he'd get a goal kick on him, and he might only have 1 to 2 goals kicked against him in an entire game most of the time. And all credit to him, he was. I think the gap between him and Nick Dacos was far smaller than anyone gave it credit for when it came to the rising star at the end of the year. But he would spit the dummy a little bit from time to time, and I didn't adore that quality in him. Like it was like turn the back, and there was a bit of a huff and overly dramatic. I'm like, that's no defender wants to have goals kicked against him, but that's not how you do it. I thought, and so I hope that he's gained a little bit of perspective this year when he hasn't had all of the troops around him. He's had to fight against his body at different points. I hope that that's been good for him and that we might see a little bit of extra maturity come out of him as a result. So, I guess just injecting my own little thing there about him, but I think it'll be invaluable for him going forward. Well, it's been awesome to have you on the show, mate. And I mean, as I've said a few times so far, please, if you're watching or listening and you haven't checked any of the Riles Macca content, please make sure to do so. Fantastic analysis. I've shouted this out many times so far, so please make sure to go check all that out. Really awesome watch and listen. Doesn't matter that he doesn't support the same team that you, the listener, does, because the analysis is fantastic. So please make sure to go check that out. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And if people want to go see what you're up to, whether it's through social media, whether it's the YouTube channel, where should people go?
Definitely to connect with me, I guess just through Instagram, at Riles Macca, quite simple as that. been getting onto Twitter a little bit more and everything. Not really the biggest fan of Twitter because I just think it's a circle jerk of bitching and moaning, really, with
It can be.
politics and AFL and everything. But yeah, I guess just through Instagram and everything, and as I've said before, loving to collaborate with people. Something I want to do more. So yeah, just through Instagram, I'd probably say is the primary route.
Yeah, make sure to take advantage of all those platforms. Reach out. Yeah, you're right about Twitter. It can be a bit of a negativity circle jerk at times, but I don't know. It's just that platform that you just can't take your eyes off. It's still from time to time. It's enthralling like that.
Yeah.
As I said, thanks so much for coming on the show. And listeners, if you haven't already done so, please make sure to subscribe to The Hoop Show on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to Behind the Play on podcast feeds as well. All of those engagements really helps grow all the platforms. Throw the 5-star reviews out there if you're on podcast feeds as well. But until next week, again, Riley, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Absolute pleasure.
Cats fans, remain Geelong strong, and I'll see you next week.